Hi, my name's Brent Willett. Today we're going to go over camera tracking and motion tracking with Zaxwerks 3D Flag. 3D Flag is a plugin for After Effects that is able to take any image or comp in After Effects and turn it into a waving flag. And one of the features of 3D Flag is that your flag can be parented to another layer in After Effects. And that allows us to be able to do some camera tracking and track it into a scene of video. So let's go ahead and get started here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take our clip of video and we need to start a new composition with that video. If we drag it down here into this little icon, that's a new comp icon. That will automatically create a comp with all the settings of that video. Let's make this fit. So this video is professionally shot by the good folks at 515 Productions in Des Moines, Iowa. It's properly lit. It was shot with a dolly, so it's a nice smooth shot, pan across or dolly across this desk. We're going to try to track this. So let's start off with tracking with Mocha. So we'll go up to Animation, Track in Mocha AE. Alright, here's Mocha. You can see we have the same clip of video in the timeline. We're going to start here a little bit in the middle because I want to put our flag on this magazine. We'll grab our X-spline tool here and just do an outline of the area that we want to track. In this case, the magazine is a rectangle, so we just end up with a pretty basic rectangle shape here. Once you get all your points, when you're done, the way to make it let go is to right click. And we can go through, we can sharpen these corners if we need to, we can move them around if we need to. In this case, our pretty simple rectangle here of a magazine, we really don't need to worry about this too much. Now in Mocha you can track forwards and backwards. So starting in the middle like we did isn't a big deal. This button here will track backwards back to the beginning. And this button here will track it forwards to the end. So we'll go ahead and do that now. We'll track both directions. It's done tracking. We can scrub through it here and see that it tracked the video very well. It's sitting right there on that magazine. So what we need to do is get this tracking data into After Effects. So we'll go down to this Export Tracking Data. There's some choices here. The one that we want is the transform data for the position, scale, and rotation. These corner pin options don't help us for tracking a 3D plugin like Flag. These would help us if we were putting on a, like say we wanted to put a flat logo on the surface of this magazine. These would help us there, but for what we're doing we need the motion information. So we'll choose that one, copy to clipboard, then we need to go back into After Effects, and here we are. We'll add a null, new null object, and make sure we're at the beginning of the timeline and do a Command V to paste, and that will paste all that tracking information from Mocha onto the null. If you hit U, you'll get all the parameters that have keyframes on them. One thing that we can see is that the null itself is all the way over here, yet the keyframes for the motion path are over here. That's because it put some keyframes and offset the anchor point. We don't want that. We actually want that anchor point to be where we're going to be tracking. So we'll click the stopwatch to turn it off. That'll get rid of all those keyframes. And then we right click and reset, and that'll put it right in the right place. And we can see that that's following along that magazine very well. Alright, now to add 3D Flag, we need to add a new layer, new solid. We'll call this flag. We'll make it comp size. It probably already is, but we'll make it comp size. White's a great color for now. And we need to go to Effect, Zaxwerks, 3D Flag. And boom, there we have a flag. To attach it to this null, we have to go down here to Attach to Layer under the Transform. Attach to Layer, we'll twirl that down. We need to pick the layer that we're going to track to. So null 9. And you can see it jumped, kind of went off screen there, but if we scrub through it, we can see that it's close to that null, and it's moving along more or less correctly, but you can tell that it's shifting. Even as just scrubbing through roughly here, you can tell that it's not anchored to that magazine at all, or anchored to that null. There's a couple of things we need to do to make it fit. We need to make this null a 3D layer, and we need to add a camera. So go up to Layer, New, Camera. These settings are fine, 35mm, that's all fine. Now you can see with the camera on, it jumped to that null, and that's the anchor point of the null is on that corner. And now if we scrub through, we're a little bit rough, but you can see that it's following that anchor point, which is following the magazine very well. And the reason we needed to make the null 3D was so that it would be in the same 3D space as the flag once we added the camera. The camera essentially unified the space of everything. And another reason for adding making the null a 3D layer is we can now rotate it in 3 dimensions to get it to line up on this magazine. Now I rotated the null, but nothing happened to the flag. So in flag we have to go back into the plugin and we have to click this update tracking button. We do that and we see it updated and jumped to the position of that null. A couple of things let's do real quick here. Let's make the flag a little bit smaller so it's a little easier to deal with in our scene. We'll make the pole shorter. We'll make the radius smaller. And let's add a bottom cap. Let's go with this elegant base here. This will help us see the perspective of it better, to see if it's lined up with the angle of the magazine. And we can also move this pole or this flag up on the pole just a little bit there to get it more towards the top. Now let's do a quick RAM preview and see what this looks like. Alright, we can see that has tracked to the magazine. It's stuck right on there. There are a couple of things that we can do here to make it look a little bit more part of the scene. One of those would be to add a shadow. And to do that, we add a new layer, new solid. White solid is perfect. Comp size again is fine. And we need to make this 3D. And we'll drag it under the flag. We need to put it at the same tilt and same position as that null to make everything easier. So on this one frame that we happen to be on here, we'll copy that position keyframe. Go to the white solid, and we'll paste that. You see it moved now. You know what? Let's call this shadow. That'll help us. We don't need to have any keyframes on this shadow layer. It was just a quick and easy way to get the information of the position to of the null to the position of the shadow. I'm actually going to even turn that off because what we're going to do is we're going to parent this to that null. So let's go ahead and do that right now. We'll grab this pick whip and just drag it down to the null, and now it will follow along with whatever the movements of that null are without having to have any keyframes. We do need to get the rotation right, and since I parented, you can see that layer now moves along with the null. Now to add a shadow, we need to have a light. So we'll do layer, new, light, and we'll do a spotlight for this. And the reason we're going to do a spotlight here is because the shadow, once we turn on cast shadows, make sure cast shadows is turned on, the spotlight allows for shadow diffusion, which means it'll make it a soft blurry shadow. We'll start with these settings. That looks okay. And you can tell that added light to that shadow catcher plane. We don't really need that. Let's tap AA, hit A twice, and get the material options and go into accepts lights and turn that off. So we don't need that shadow catcher plane to actually accept the lights. But we still don't have a shadow. That's because we need to go into flag and go down here a little bit to shadow catcher plane until the shadow layer is our shadow catcher plane. Now you can see we have a shadow there. Let's go back to the light and move it around. Okay, I was trying to get that shadow to kind of match the other shadows we have here. If I turn off the shadow layer, you see our shadow is still there because the shadow itself is on the flag layer. It just needs the shadow layer solid for the information of where the shadow is going to be. But we kind of have it matched more or less to the direction the shadows are going. But one thing that I did was I put the light kind of behind the flag, so now the flag's dark. So let's add one more light. And we'll make this one a parallel light, and we will turn off cast shadows for this one. There, now we have some more light. A little brighter, maybe we'll bring down, hit AA again. Bring down the brightness. And one more thing we need to do, we need to take our spotlight, let's call this spotlight. And we also need to parent that to the null. So once again, we'll drag the pick whip down to the null there. And this is because the camera is staying still. Everything is moving past the camera. If we didn't parent the spotlight to the null, the flag would move out of the light. So we needed to do that to keep the flag lit and to keep the shadow in the right place. So let's try another one, something very similar. This time it's a very less than professional video. This is just a clip that I shot with a smartphone with the light that was in the room, a very grainy, rough piece of video. And I set this up the exact same way. To save some time, I already set up the flag. I just have this layer soloed. So if I unsolo this, you see I already have the flag set up with the shadow exactly like we did before. I tracked it in Mocha. I brought it into After Effects and pasted the tracking information. Let's do a RAM preview on this and see what this one looks like. Alright, you can see it tracked. It's basically in the right place. It's moving along the way it should. But it's not rock solid. There's some wiggle in it. You can tell it's not stuck to the table. When it's sitting there at the end, you can see that it's wiggling around a little bit. So we could go back into Mocha and try to get a better track out of it, but there's another option. We can try After Effects built-in camera tracker. So I'll take that very same clip, drag it into the new comp icon, and we're going to track this video with, go to Animation, Track Camera. Right away it automatically starts to analyze the video, and when it's done, the first thing you see is that it's added all these tracking markers that follow with the items in the scene. Looks like they're following pretty well. So what you can do is you can just go up to the video here. It automatically will triangulate between different points, and you can pick out the one that looks like it's the best position and angle for what you need. Let's go with that one there. Then we right click, create null and camera, and it automatically created those here. One thing you can see right away, the null is tiny. It's right there, but you can see it. And if we go to the null, remember Mocha, we pasted all that tracking information onto the null. If we hit U, there are no keyframes. It put all the keyframes on the camera. So it matched the movement of the actual camera and put keyframes in the After Effects camera to match that movement. So what we can do is we can add our flag, layer, new, solid, flag, effect, Zaxwerks 3D flag. First thing we'll do is attach this to that null. And there it is. You can see it, put it down in that tiny null. It's tilted the wrong way, but we can very easily fix that. Hit R for rotation on the null and rotate this 90 degrees on the x-axis. And once again, we have to go update the tracking and flag. So there it is, standing up. We'll make it a little bit bigger here, and we'll add our elegant stand again. So there it is. It's already at the right angle for the perspective of the table, and it's in the right place. If we need to, we can move it around with this null. Since the null is on the plane of the table, we can, as long as we don't mess around with the Y, the up and down axis, we can move it back a little bit. And of course, have to update the tracking. So now we've got a little bit closer to that gargoyle. And let's check out the RAM preview on this one. Alright, that looks like a very solid track. You can see even with all the wiggles in the camera, it's staying right there on the table. Looks very good this way. And of course you can add the shadow layer and the lights and all that. Alright, so we've got this. Let's check out one more example. This one is another piece of video shot by 515 Productions. Once again, professional video, lit well, looks good. But this time the camera is not moving, but the subject is moving. Let's say we want to put a flag on the top of this box. We could try a camera track, because that worked really well the last time. And I see I already have this set up. But the camera isn't moving. There's all sorts of tracking points, but they're not moving at all because the camera's not moving, and there aren't any tracking points on the man or on the box. So After Effects camera tracker is not going to work in this case. So we'll just delete that. This time Mocha would be the perfect choice. We'll go to Animation, Track in Mocha. And let's again go to the middle somewhere. We're going to find with this track, this box is just one solid brown color, and it's moving kind of quickly, so there's some motion blur in the video itself. And it doesn't always keep the tracking points real well. But after we do a tracking run through, we can go back and do some adjustments. So let's track it first. Alright, so we tracked it forwards and backwards, and we can see that, yep, it definitely gets off as it moves. Luckily, Mocha does very well of interpreting between keyframes. You can see each time I make a change, it makes a little green keyframe here. This was the original one, and this is where I'm changing it now. So I changed my all my points, and it'll do a pretty good job of figuring out where it needs to go. I'm going to have to go through a few keyframes here. I'll do that real quick, and we'll catch up here after I've done this. So once again, let's export tracking data, copy to clipboard, go back to After Effects. Okay, and again we're going to go through all the things to set up the flag that we did before with the solid layer, adding a camera, adding a null, pasting all the Mocha information into the null. We'll just do that real quickly since we've gone over it before. Okay, now we need to rotate our null a little bit. In this case, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. The comma and period keys will zoom in and out. The comma key will zoom out. The period key will zoom in. I'm going to use the rotation tool this time to rotate this null and get it so it's about the right perspective for the box. If I put it right on the our axis points here, you can see I get the Y or the X or the Z, and with the rotation tool then I can rotate it just on that axis. And we'll do our update tracking. Alright, that looks pretty good. Let's do a quick RAM preview here and see what happens. Alright, so we see a couple of things. It looks like it tilts a little bit, and then there's a strange little dip right there. That's because he tips the box a little bit, and the Mocha information adjusted the scale, so it's actually getting flag's getting smaller all of a sudden. We can, in this case, take all the scale information out of here. We'll leave the first frame and the last keyframe, and we'll take out all these middle ones. That'll take care of that little dip that we have going on in there. I'm going to go to the end. If you hit the end key on the keyboard, it will take you to the end of the timeline. Similarly, if you hit the home key, it'll take you to the beginning of the timeline. But I'll go to the end. I'm going to adjust the scale in this end null just a little bit, make it a little bit smaller. And I'm also going to, since I'm here, adjust the rotation on these. And when I was using the rotation tool, that adjusted the orientation. So let's go back to the home point where we started. Add a keyframe for the orientation. I might do this in a couple places. I'll go here in the middle and adjust this a little bit just to get it so it's not quite so tilty. Trying to keep it as perpendicular to the box top as possible. We'll go to the end again, and that's actually still pretty good. Just a touch. And then of course we have to go to flag and update tracking. There, now it's tilted a little better. Of course, once again, you could go through this and add your shadow layer, add some lights, do whatever effects you might need to make it look like it's a little more in the scene, whether that's making it a little more blurry. One thing we could do in flag, if you go into the setup window here, on the output there is motion blur. Let's turn that on. Let's make it, say, 8 passes. The more passes you do, the better the blur will be, the smoother it'll be, but it will take longer to render. I found that 8 or 12 seems to be a pretty good happy medium. We'll select 8, click OK. You also have to turn on the motion blur on the layer itself, so we'll turn it on for the layer, and then up here the master motion blur, which will enable the blur. Turn that on, and we'll see that it got a little fuzzy, a little blurry. So that'll help put it into this scene, especially since this is moving quite a bit. The motion blur will help give it that extra realism. We'll do another RAM preview here. Looks like it's tracking pretty well. It follows along on the box top very well. It keeps with the movements of the box as he's walking and moving his arms. The nice thing is we have options. You can use Mocha to track the motion of the objects in the scene, or you can use the built-in camera tracker in After Effects. Depending on your video and the situation, one might work better than the other. Hopefully this video was helpful for you, and you're able to go out and have some fun with 3D Flag. Thanks for watching.